Lucky Nations, in my opinion, is a bad mechanic. One of, if not the worst mechanic in the game. Some people dislike the estates, some the fort system. For me, Lucky Nations takes the cake. I feel that it is a bandage to try and fix a problem that does not exist. I've held this belief for as long as I've been playing Europa Universalis 4, and as such I do not enable it. First, some history behind my experience with the game, just so you maybe have a better idea of where I'm coming from. Europa Universalis 4 is my first Europa Universalis game, and my second Paradox interactive game that I played. I started playing back in March 2014, so a little under a year after the game had come out, and since then I have racked up over 2100 hours of playtime, according to Steam. And because Lucky Nations is a requirement to earn achievements, I've not gotten a single one. I don't mind this though, as I kicked the achievement hunter habit when I stopped playing on consoles and moved to PC. When I first started playing, I did not use Iron Man, as I thought that as a fresh player I needed to learn what I was doing, and the ability to save and reload seemed like a precious and useful tool. I did however enable Lucky Nations, as I was curious what it was. At first I used the historical setting, and then the random setting, just to give my game some flavour. After a while though, after I sort of understood the mechanics and understood the various bonuses that Lucky Nations received, I turned it off and have not really enabled it since. From patch 1.18, there are 12 countries with the luck modifier. Prussia, but only after 1700, Muscovy, England, France, Austria, the Netherlands and Brandenburg, and up until the year 1700, the Ottomans, Portugal, Poland, Castile and Sweden are also lucky nations. Also Jan Mayen, but they're a joke country and we're discounting those. I am not a bad player, though of course like any person new to a Paradox game, I was in the very beginning, and I don't dislike Lucky Nations because it makes the game too hard. If difficulty is the reason that you enable Lucky Nations, then in my opinion you're going about it the wrong way. Playing as France or Austria or Muscovy with the Lucky Nations enabled is easier than playing as Scotland or the Teutonic Order or Bavaria with Lucky Nations turned off. If you want a difficult game, then your choice of nation is far more impactful than Lucky Nations could ever be. So I dislike it for three main reasons. Firstly, because I dislike unfairness. I dislike it when the AI gets to use mechanics that the player cannot. I'm fine with the Ottomans, Netherlands and Great Britain having their own unique governments, even though some may think those mechanics are overpowered. The Ottomans are arguably the strongest nation in the game. Hell, even the tips in the loading screen tell you exactly that. And I do not find it unfair that the Ming is so strong when I play for example, Japan or Dai Viet. I don't find it unfair that Brandenburg's idea set is amazing when I'm playing as Naples, who have one of the worst idea sets in the game. Because if I want to play one of those strong nations with those overpowered government forms and those national ideas, I can. It's fair because if I choose to, I can play with exactly what the AI has. Lucky Nations doesn't work that way. If I play as France, despite AI France having the Lucky Nations modifier, I'm not a lucky nation. Same goes for every lucky nation in the game. It is an AI specific modifier, and just like how the AI cheats at naval attrition, and I know I'm going to get a little heat for this, for Zone of Control, I find the Lucky Nations modifier to just be another form of AI cheating. Secondly, I feel like it is a railroad. These 12 nations, if they ever come to exist, I'm looking at you Prussia, are already strong, and whether you play with or without Lucky Nations, the Ottomans and France and Russia are always likely to be your endgame bosses. Lucky Nations just makes it even more likely, bordering on almost a certainty, that these nations will prosper. I like to describe EU4 as an A-history simulator, or a what-if simulator. I know EU4 is not a sim, I get that, it's just a nice word that somewhat fits what I'm talking about. As soon as you unpause the game on the 11th of November at 1444, it ceases to be historically accurate, though one could argue that it was never historically accurate to begin with. I like the uncertainty of the game, that no two games will feel alike. A common post on the EU4 subreddit and Facebook group is one where France or the Ottomans has been broken up due to the AI, while they were busy playing as Gujarat or some other non-European country. So say you manage to do something like this, bring France to a one province minor. How many people would call that lucky? I have removed Baguette, but for one small province, yet the game still classes them as a lucky nation. Why? They clearly weren't lucky enough to survive the onslaught of my armies, and as such they've been reduced to one of the weakest countries in the game. A French lake in a sea of Burgundy. Lastly, and most importantly in my eyes, is how ahistorical the modifiers actually are. If we look at the modifiers that lucky nations get, we see here that they are plus 1% missionary strength, minus 10% stability cost modifier, plus 10% global institution spread, minus 25% mercenary cost, minus 20% embracement cost, minus 20% advisor cost, minus 1 interest per annum, plus 25% manpower recovery speed, plus 10% fort defense, plus 5% siege ability, plus 10% spy network construction, plus 25% improved relations, minus 1 national unrest, 0.5 yearly republican tradition, plus 1 yearly legitimacy, minus 25% aggressive expansion impact. And additionally, they get plus 1 to every ruler stat. So that horrible Enrique heir that you get as Castile, or Henry of England, in the AI's hands that guy's a 1-1-1. Still terrible, but not as bad as what you, the player, will have. How many of these modifiers actually represent the historical reasons why those countries succeeded in real life? I would argue none. The closest, in my eyes, is the bonus to ruler stats, because a nation with a smart, dedicated, competent ruler can turn a country's fortune around, such as was the case with Charles the Bold of Burgundy, in the same way that an incompetent, inbred oaf like Charles II of Habsburg can do the opposite. In my opinion, and I'm no historian, a nation prospered for a few main reasons. Firstly was its location. This is most evident when it comes to the likes of the Ottomans or England. England was spared fighting and devastation on its own soil from outside influences many times because they were set apart from mainland Europe. Any potential enemy had to cross the English Channel before they could realistically hope to defeat England, and with England knowing this fact, it had a formidable navy. To conquer England was no mean feat, and that is why it is almost 1,000 years since such an event has occurred. The Ottomans, on the other hand, had a different locational advantage. They held the key between east and west. Before the construction of the Suez Canal, trade flowed through their borders. To trade with the Chinese or Indians, you had to take the long drawn-out journey via sea past the Cape of Good Hope, or you could travel through Ottoman territory. And back then, travelling was nowhere near as fast as it is today. You would make several stops, trading with the area that you stopped in, purchasing food and accommodation, and enriching the area you stopped in. Location was everything. Secondly, and this sort of fits in with the first, to be honest, is the terrain, the fertility of your soil and the natural resources you had at your disposal. Having a very fertile region allowed you to grow more crops, which would then feed more people, which would then increase the population of your nation. In general, the larger your population, the larger an army you could muster. France is a great example of this. Famines and droughts in infertile soil were not conducive to a high population, and having natural resources like gold or gems or a rich copper mine could help boost your economy. And lastly, pure luck, chance, happenstance. From the foiled Mongol invasions of Japan due to typhoons to the Spanish Armada being broken up by a storm as they attempted to invade England, luck is ever present. This is not present in the game, however, nor could it ever be. The only luck-based mechanic in EU4 is the dice rolls in combat and sieges, the points your monarch gets, and in the amount of pips you get when you roll a general or an admiral. I just don't think that it's needed. A common argument against disabling lucky nations is that you would see powerhouses like France and the Ottomans break up when they shouldn't have, and after 2,000 plus hours playing EU4 without lucky nations enabled, I can put that fear to rest. France is still strong, the Ottomans are still strong, Muscovy is still strong. In games when I have played outside Europe, I've seen France go on to conquer Britain and the Iberian Peninsula. I've seen the Ottomans conquer the Arabian Peninsula, the Mamluks, Crimea and more. I have seen Russia with borders rivaling their modern day size, and the very few times that I do see these lucky nations crumble, it's always intriguing and always fun. No, I don't think it adds to the game, and I think the game would be better were lucky nations removed. I'm not trying to change anyone's opinion here, just giving my own. If you like to play with lucky nations, then more power to you. Let me know in the comments why, I'm very interested to hear your reasoning.